let's look at the top DPS classes in BFA right now, coming up. A little bit prior to the expansion coming out, I made a video describing what I thought were the strongest classes in Battle for Azeroth, or going into Battle for Azeroth after all the reworks and everything came out with patch 8.0. For the most part, I was actually pretty correct on all of my guesses for the most part. So let's break it down by class. Number one is the Arcane Mage. Now, Arcane Mages are insane right now. They have multiple abilities that they can augment their damage with, right? So they have the rune that they can put on the ground for 40% increased damage. They can also pop Arcane Power, and if they talent for it, that increases their damage by another 60%, so they're up to 200% damage off of cooldowns alone. Follow that up by the amount of arcane charges they have, and if they pop one missile or one arcane missile, that is going to do a ton of damage, guys. So that covers kind of their burst and their consistent damage. So what about whenever we move into their AoE? Well, they always have Arcane Barrage, which hits everybody in an area around the main target, as well as Arcane Explosion, which allows them to do a ton of damage every couple of seconds to everybody around them. It's not an overwhelming amount of damage to every single individual, but combined, that's pretty crazy, and it can push them up to around 16,000 DPS on multiple targets, on 3 to the small mobs of like 15 targets or something like that. It's insane. I've seen some Arcane Mages get into like 22,000 DPS. I've seen some at 18,000 DPS, and it's all because of the AoE abilities. Whenever you focus on the single target abilities for them, however, they kind of drop off a little bit, but they are still the best DPS in the entire game. So, as I mentioned before, with the rune, as well as the 4 charges that are stacked up, as well as Arcane Power if you pop it, that eventually equates to right about 13,000 DPS. And this isn't just at your mythic level, this is also at normal. This is anytime, normal, heroic, and mythic. I'm seeing people do a ton of damage at these levels. So the next spec is, of course, Sub-Rogues. Sub-Rogues are absolutely insane right now. So are Assassination Rogues. They're both very, very strong. Outlaw Rogues are pretty good too, actually. I think they're all within like the top 10 DPS slots, maybe top 15. Outlaw always gets kind of the shit into the stick on that one, but that's all right. So Rogues have Fan of Knives, and that's pretty much their only AoE ability that they press. You also have Secret Technique, which is a very strong ability that you talent into if that's something that you want to take. It actually does more damage than a normal Eviscerate, and then it goes on to hit people around you, or people within like 10 yards, for half that damage, so it does damage to pretty much everybody. So again, if you have a single target, this is where they really shine as Sub-Rogue. Sub-Rogue single target can do about 12.5k up to 13-ish. Right now, that's what I've been seeing those numbers the most. And keep this in mind, this is over the course of probably like 100 dungeons so far. Maybe a little bit more than that, but typically about 100 dungeons I've seen this, and so I'm just kind of pulling data from that. I'm not necessarily looking at the actual charts or anything like that are online. I'm just making my own data from what I personally have experienced. Whenever it comes to 3 or more targets, you typically fall behind a little bit with Outlaw Rogues because you can only do between like 10 and 11,000 damage per second. Depending on what you use, if you use Secret Technique, or if you use Fan of Knives, those are pretty much your only 2 AoE abilities. You could also spec into some other AoE abilities. It's all kind of different for each rogue. So Enhancement Shamans are actually able to do between 12 and 13k DPS from what I've been able to see. So to give you guys an idea, that's pretty close to what the Arcane Mage can do, and they do it not even really in their burst. It's so strange to see. Their rotation is just such a high damage and a consistent damaging rotation that it does so much damage just all the time. They never drop. They never spike and then drop, really. Arcane Mage usually spikes around like 18,000 and it'll come down, or 16,000 and it'll come down to, 12 or 13k. Enhancement's not like that. Enhancement kind of ramps up to it and then it stays there. It doesn't drop very much, it just stays very consistent. And then whenever they do AoE, 3 or more targets, they typically use Sunder, which does a ton of damage, as well as Crash Lightning, which also does a ton of damage depending on the amount of targets in front of them. And I believe it also puts a debuff on the ground. Haven't played Enhancement myself. So, Retribution Paladins. Now, this is an interesting one, and I believe this is a more difficult DPS class to play, just because you have to manage your holy power a little bit better than it seems like a lot of the other classes really have to focus on their energy or whatever their thing is, So arcane power or arcane charges for the mage, they don't really have to pay too much attention to them, whereas paladins do. So I've actually seen a lot of paladins that can get up to like 12,000 DPS. I've also seen paladins who can't get above 6,000 DPS, and I think it all kind of boils down to their rotation, to their talents, and their gear. I think all of that plays a very, very big role into a paladin's DPS. And I think some paladins get kind of confused on what exactly they want to do, what they need to do, and etc. But with that being said, Ret Paladin does about 10,000 consistent DPS. I had about 5 Ret Paladins that could hold that pretty well. I had one that actually managed to do about 12,000 DPS, and then I had a few that would do between 8,000 and 9,000 DPS in my groups. Their AoE is about 10,000 also. And the 5th, of course, is Destrolock. Now, yeah, that's a kind of weird one. Most people are like, oh man, Affliction's so good right now. No, I can't stand Affliction. Personally, I'm a Lock player. I play Warlocks. Affliction is good in, I guess, like raid scenarios, or scenarios where things take forever to die because you can just constantly be dotting things. However, in like normal dungeons, heroic dungeons, and mythic dungeons, once you get that gear that you need, you just plow through it. The best spec for just plowing through it and doing a ton of damage in a short amount of time has got to be Destrolock. So a Destrolock does and holds right about 10k DPS. Their AoE, if they do it right, can hit up to about 12k. However, it usually drops to around 10k, and it sits right about there. So they're a very strong DPS class. Of course, use Havoc along with Chaos Bolts for two targets. That way they can spread that damage, as well as they use that for everything, like Conflagrate and Immolate and Incinerate and everything just goes into that, as well as your Chaos Bolts. So guys, that is all 5. We will go through them really quick one more time. You have Arcane Mage, Sub-Rogue, Enhancement Shaman, Ret Pally, and Destrolock. Those are what I believe, and those are what I believe to be the top damaging or DPS specs in Battle for Azeroth. Now, that is always up for debate. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you think I'm an absolute idiot for thinking that mages are at the top of the DPS chart? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think. Also, if you are interested, join my Discord, and finally subscribe to my channel, because we're trying to grow this thing and make a little bit of a community out of it, have a little bit of fun. Anyway, guys, much love, and until next time, I will see you all later. Peace!